Good afternoon. Welcome to Healthy Lifestyle. I'm Lorianne Kazdia. Our goal here at Healthy Lifestyle is to inspire you, educate, empower you to fulfilling a healthy, emotional, spiritual, and physical life so you can feel empowered to live the life you have always wanted and dreamed. You know I say this all the time. We are here to serve one another. I will continue to say it until you start serving other people. So what is your intention for this week for yourself? What are you going to do to make it better than last week? You need to just look at it. Just look for the joy. So we have our good friend Paul here, and he is just, oh my gosh, we were just talking before, and you are just amazing. Everything that you do, and we want to talk about that today, and some events coming up. So this is really jam-packed with a lot of information. So you guys need to make sure you have pen and paper so you can write down all the events and contact information, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But you have been doing what you do for a very long time, and you're very spiritual. You've definitely influenced my life. You've actually significantly impacted my life in such a positive way that you really jettisoned me in the right direction. Thank you for that. I am so grateful. You have no idea.
You're welcome.
So let's talk about your path. How did you get into doing what you do?
Well, first I want to say it's an honor to be back again. I appreciate you inviting me. It started way back when I was a little boy. I had unusual feelings, thoughts, and I had visions that I guess were not, now that I find out, is not typical of most people. Started usually around the age of 6. I was raised a Catholic, and my mom and dad enforced that we'd have to pray every night. And when I did, something strange happened. I always had answers back to them. So I would have a conversation rather than just a one-sided conversation with God. I would hear things back, most of which was about love and life and the world and different emotions and feelings at 6 years old. I never told anybody about it. I thought it was pretty common until the age of 13 when I started to hear voices, actual voices in the right side of my ear. And it became a little unnerving. It's a difficult time of any child's life. And I kept it suppressed and kept it quiet, but it got to the point where it got overwhelming. And I'd have to play music just to douse it out, so that I wouldn't be able to hear it. And again, I kind of suppressed it for many years. And then later on in my later teens, around 18, I went to see a counselor because I was a little concerned with this. And she was very spiritual, a wonderful woman, and non-conventional in therapy. And she asked me to ask the voice questions. Simply, she said, and I did. And it turned out that it was a spirit guide, from what I know now, who had attached itself to me to give me guidance during the unfoldment of my gifts. And so that's how it all began. And then shortly thereafter, I started to take classes and workshops and get myself certified in different spiritual areas, and it just unfolded into this amazing business. Which is an amazing business. It's funny that you said about suppressing, and some people anesthetize themselves utilizing drugs or alcohol or something, and that definitely, if you want to get more in touch with your intuition, you really want to avoid all that. Yes. Because it really does numb you out, and you want to be awake during the life. That's what's been exciting about the last 5 years is I'm awake. I wasn't really awake before, and now I'm awake, and there's a huge difference in that, don't you think? Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's movement going on in the world, I believe. That's a human consciousness to spiritual awareness, and it's really waking people up to what is right, not, being right. It's about what's right.
Yeah. It's amazing. So how do you define yourself? A medium?
So people call me a psychic medium, but I feel like I don't know if that's a watered down version of what I believe myself to be. I actually call myself an intuitive because that's basically what I use with every facet of what I do. I do intuitive counseling. I do healing work. I do readings. I do mediumship. So I think all of that combined, the common denominator is your intuition. And so I use that as the label for what I consider myself to be.
So how do you differentiate for people listening between a psychic and a medium?
A psychic is somebody who can foresee, can see into someone's lives, whether it be past or future, events and circumstances. And then a medium is somebody who meets the spiritual beings in the middle. That's why they call them a medium. So they in spirit are of an energy form who come down to meet us in the middle, and they've labeled that mediums, and we're able to communicate with them by them putting thoughts and impressions and voices within us.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's usually on the right side, too.
It's always on the right side.
Yeah. Why is that?
The right side of your brain, I think, is the spiritual side of you.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely controls the spiritual... It controls the left side of your body, but it actually is the spiritual part of your brain.
Oh, I finally got an answer to that question. I never knew. So what are your services? What kind of things do you do for people?
Well, like I said, I do... Now?
Yeah.
I do non-conventional therapy, which is intuitive counseling. To me, it's it's where most conventional therapists will do the listening, whereas spiritual therapists will do more of the teaching. Mm-hmm. It's a little different concept. I also do couples counseling, and I do energy healing. I do both Reiki and Anra healing, which are two different forms.
What's Anra?
Anra is it's using your heart and energy from the universe. It's a similar energy to Reiki, where you're drawing the energy from the universe to heal. It's a universal energy. Anra is a little bit more personal, in my opinion, but it's different and not as wide known or worldwide known. And I also do readings, obviously, and I do mediumship. I do. Now I am doing lecturing and teaching. I teach classes and workshops, and for people to unfold their spiritual gifts.
Yeah, you're definitely very spiritual based. So I think that differentiates you from many of the psychic mediums or intuitives. Very, very, very spiritual, and I see that in the work that you do, and even the advice that you give when you're counseling. Mm-hmm. So you're one of those gentle giant counselors, which is, okay, you can come in and say whatever you want, but I'm going to tell you the truth, and you can't make it up.
Some people say that they feel as though the Band-Aid's been ripped off, but in the same breath say that they're able to begin healing. Yeah. And so I might be a little aggressive with what I do.
But you do it with kindness.
With kindness. Yeah. I was just going to say that, in love, because I don't feel like too much time should be spent on a problem. It should be more looking into the solution and finding the solution, whereas I think most conventional ways in the past have always revolved around a problem. Yeah. So I kind of want to get to the truth, like you said. And get to the truth. Let's fix it, mend it. Let's even love it and move forward. Yeah. Well,
don't you have to accept something to then excuse it? Like, sure. You accept it. Yes, it's there. I made a mistake or what have you. Now I forgive myself. Let it go. Move forward. Or figure out what the lesson is in there, right?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
There's we say that all the time on the show. I say it all the time. Is we're here to do two things: learn our lessons and serve one another. Mm-hmm. And through serving, actually, you learn a lot of your lessons anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I find when I get too much in my head or too much in ourselves, all you have to do is go out and serve somebody else, and suddenly those answers come to you. Sure. Because you're really being sent to go do something to teach you and give you the answer.
Sure. Selflessness actually invokes your spirit. Whereas, most conventional human traits, they nurture the human part of us, our ego. And so that keeps us in a human state of mind, which in my opinion is a limited version of ourselves. It's the 5 sensory version. Whereas when you do anything of a good nature or a positive emotion, you invoke your spirit. It opens up your whole soul.
And you feel it, right? In the chest area. You just you feel good.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know why, but you feel good. And it's so simple. It's like, you just help somebody out without any expectation of anything back.
Right.
And that's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
You actually do that every day every minute of every day of your life. One of the things I know that you have a really big heart for is children surviving cancer.
Yes.
And you do a program every year around November, right?
Yes.
And it's packed, and every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Pretty soon we're not going to have a venue large enough to be able to handle it, and I hope that's the case for you.
Me too.
It's such a beautiful, moving event. This year it's November 9th. And where are you holding it?
At the Stonebridge Country Club in Smithtown.
Sure. And every year it's just so moving, and everybody comes in the doors in anticipation, smiles on their faces. Everybody leaves, huge smiles on their faces, and you just feel the love in the room, and the shift that goes on after each speaker. I definitely feel a difference between each speaker, and how it affects everybody listening. It's just amazing. And then please share what you do every year with the children.
Well, this year and 2 years ago, we've done it for the children with cancer. Last year, we did it for animals, actually. We brought in dogs who were in need of homes, and we had 10 adopted right on the spot. But this year, and most years, I do it for the children with cancer. We just recently did a Easter egg hunt for them as well. I just find it the most soul-rewarding thing. And your life changes, your priorities change. Life is put into perspective when you're in the presence of a child that's hurting.
Yeah.
So I choose to do this event in hopes of bringing a smile to their face. And, so what we do is a portion of all the tickets sold go to raising money for us to grant a wish for each child. And this year we're bringing 6 children in to bring on stage and to grant them a wish. Of course, they won't know about it. It's going to be a surprise. And just to see the smile on their face, but even equally as much the parents' piece of just seeing their child smile, to me is just, there's nothing greater than that.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
It's beautiful to watch. It's just beautiful to watch, and to be part of that it renders me speechless, which is really hard to do. So it really does. It just touches your soul so deeply, and these children are so graceful with what they're dealing with. They're so strong. If you want to see courage at its finest,
yes,
look in the eyes of a child who is dealing with this, who shouldn't have to deal with it. We should not have to have these things happening, but they're really here to teach us, aren't they?
Absolutely. And I think we can learn some of our greatest lessons from the innocence of a child.
Yeah.
They're non-judgmental, and they're in most cases, even these sick children are happier than we are.
Yes.
They find joy in the simple things.
There's a contentment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it reprioritizes your life in a moment to realize that the things you've been worrying about or upset about, really in the big scale of things, don't really mean as much when you see this little child, and they're beautiful.
Yeah, they really are. The years ago that struck me. My sister had challenges, and she was always happy, no matter what. She was always happy, and that was very. It really left a mark on my life, and I judge my having a bad day on there are people in the world struggling far more than I am, no matter what challenge has been put in front of me. There's somebody much more deeply challenged, and it really does put things back into perspective.
Sure.
And if that doesn't work, go to the water, because that will put everything back into perspective. You realize you're a grain of sand compared to the strength of the water.
100%.
Just like that storm the other day.
Oh my gosh,
that was 20 minutes in, 20 minutes out, and whoa, definitely caught our attention, right?
100%. Yes.
Yeah. So talk about the actual annual event, and what's the name of it this year? Is it still?
It's a spiritual awareness seminar and charity event, and this year we've named it Healing Hearts and Souls. Mm-hmm. It's all going to be revolving around different types of healing: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, obviously. Each speaker will have a few minutes to speak, and then our featured speaker is Paul Young again this year, back by popular demand.
Good friend of ours. Yes,
he's a wonderful man who is the author of the best-selling book The Shack.
Yeah.
Such a genuine man with a heart and soul of gold. And we are going to have the kids, like I said, each speaker will bring up a child and grant them a wish.
Are you going to have the tree?
Yes. Oh, no, this year's going to be a little different. I actually have a little surprise.
I love the tree.
It's similar.
The gratitude tree was like one of my favorite things. I love that. I still practice that.
Yes. We may have a wishing tree this year also for the children at Stony Brook University.
Oh, that's
the oncology.
lovely.
Yeah, we're going to have them ask for things, and we're going to have people pick a wish off the tree and grant it for those kids.
Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
The gratitude tree, you got to talk about that, because that's something everybody can instill on every single day.
Well, it's little random acts of kindness and to be grateful every day. So we actually made a tree with hundreds of random acts of kindness and wonderful sayings of gratitude, and we asked people to take one and pass it on. And the stories that came back to us, the simple stories of just buying somebody a cup of coffee, or saying hello to somebody, opening a door for someone, they were shocking about how much it spread into more acts of kindness. And it's just simple acts like that can change the world.
Yeah, it's amazing, because you don't know how you impact somebody else by just opening a door or by giving them a smile when they feel like they're invisible.
Yes.
And you give, you make eye contact with them. You ever see someone, you make eye contact with them, and all of a sudden they just kind of like jump back a little bit, and their eyes get open, and then all of a sudden you see a spark come out, like, you do see me,
Yes.
I am visible. Those are beautiful moments. I also, I love the lottery ticket one. You go find a lottery ticket, you go to a random place in a parking lot, and you just leave it in someone's windshield.
Yep.
And that was fun. I actually did it, and I'll never forget. I drove off before I found out if they won or not. Darn it! But they came out a lot faster than I had anticipated, and it happened to be a veteran. I had no idea.
Oh wow!
But they were a veteran, and I drove away before, but. They took it off. They went to get in the car, and then you could see they were ticked off. They were like, like they got a ticket. So they get out of the car and they pick it up, and then all of a sudden they're looking around like, where did this come from? I don't know what happened after that, but it was so nice, and it was like my own little secret that I went driving away with, and it just filled your heart, and I hope it did something good. But
see, if you would have waited, it would have been your ego looking for satisfaction or gratification. But when you leave without knowing the outcome, it's just a sense of gratitude.
Yeah,
which is so beautiful.
It was a really great feeling, to that, so much so that I love doing it. It's like a little hobby now.
Good.
And so gratitude tree was a brilliant idea, and I love this idea this year too.
This one's going to be an interesting one. I'm trying to conjure up a different idea this year.
Yeah, you're always very mysterious. You're mystical too, but you're very mysterious.
Surprised, so it's different every year.
You have, well, and then do you have all those wonderful vendors?
Yes.
We need to talk about the vendors, because they are beautiful. The stuff that they bring, and they're very germane to. It's not just random.
No,
it's very germane to the spiritualness of what you're doing, and there are other organizations there.
Yes.
The ones with beads was wonderful last year too.
Yes, that's Linda Newsom with the beads are for her. This is an organization for women on Long Island who have lost their children to drug addiction.
Yeah. And
so they make these beads in honor of their children who have passed, and sell them and use the money to benefit other families who are hurting. And
they kind of give wishes to other families too. Yeah.
They grant wishes.
Yeah.
It's a great organization.
And then the Soul Sisters are there.
Soul Sisters and
Love
Soul
the Soul
Brothers,
Sisters and Soul Brothers. Oh my God, the Soul Brothers are the kindest men going that I've ever met. They help. They chaperone you in. They make sure everything's good. They park the car. They'll do anything. They're just wonderful.
It's a great group of guys. Both groups are wonderful. My intention behind starting the group was to give women and men a safe place to talk about feelings and emotions, a safe place to express without having any judgment, to learn about spiritual suggestions and spirituality rather than conventional. And it's turned out to be really great. We've started off with 8 men. We have 72 now.
Oh, my goodness.
And the women are up to about 30 or 40, I think. And the objective is to learn, but also to then go out into the community and serve. That's what we're doing.
When we come back, I'd love you to tell the story about one of your field trips.
Okay, sure.
With your Soul Brothers, because that, to me, that's really incredibly moving, and it really tells what this group is about, that you came up with. How did you come up with the idea?
Oh, gosh. A friend of mine was part of another group, and I didn't completely agree with their idea of spirituality. So it was sort of a challenge. He said, well, why don't you come up with a group that you think is spiritual? And so I did. And it's not stopped. It just keeps growing and growing and growing.
And that's a good thing. That means you're on the right track.
Oh, yeah,
so
100%.
it really is. Each one of them have such a unique story, yet all of them have a certain string that pulls them all together.
Yeah, it's a beautiful group of people.
Yeah. And just serving the community and themselves. They're serving their lives better too.
Sure.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the Soul Sisters came on the backs of the Soul Brothers, right?
Yeah. In fact, most of the wives of the guys were getting a little jealous and frustrated that we were always meeting and doing all these wonderful things. So they came together as a group and asked me, hey, do you think you can structure a female group called the Soul Sisters? And I said, sure. And I helped them structure it. And now it's run by a few wonderful women, and they are just growing leaps and bounds and doing some incredible work as well.
I love it. Stay with us.
Sure.
Excellent. You're listening to Healthy Lifestyle. I'm Lori-Ann Kazdia. We are here with our good friend Paul Saladino, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Healthy Lifestyle. I'm Lori-Ann. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas on topics or guests you'd like to see, please email us at healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. And of course, follow us on social media at Healthy Lifestyle with LA. You can also hear us on iHeartRadio. We're here every Saturday at 3 o'clock, and you can hear the repeats of the shows anytime you want on SoundCloud. We're here with Paul Saladino, and we are talking about spiritualism and his wonderful annual event. And we just left off about your Soul Brothers that you had put together.
Yes.
Would you share that story when you went into the city? I love this story.
About the angel?
Yes.
Yeah. So every year we, the guys and I, try to raise money, and we rent a bus and we go into Manhattan before that, we actually fill backpacks full of survival items, such as like water and food and gift cards and blankets and socks and hats. And we fill about 200 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, and we rent a bus, and about 35 to 40 of us go into the city, and we disperse throughout the Manhattan, and we just hand them, but not just hand them. We sit with them to ask their stories and why they got there and what we can do to help them if there's anything that they need. And most men are not really able to do that. They just would rather hand a $5 bill, or if nothing, and walk by. But this is what our group is about. So getting to know people. And there was this one year where we did it, and 4 of the gentlemen were pretty much new to the group and not as believers or not as well versed in spirituality. So I was saying to myself, boy, I hope that they don't get a group together. I wish they would have other spiritual guys with them in their group. We pick randomly on the bus. And these 4 men picked each other. Oh. So they were together as a group. And
what are the odds?
Yeah, what are the odds?
But wait, I know the answer to this one. Go ahead.
And they were walking through Manhattan doing this, and they had approached a woman. Oh, and in the bag was a prayer card that we put in for each person. And they approached this woman who had a whole bunch of bags, and she was covered completely except her face. The hat that she was wearing only allowed her face to show. And they walked up to her, and she immediately said to them, I've been waiting for you guys. Where have you been? And they looked at each other kind of confused, and they said, well, we're here now. Would you like a backpack full of survival items? And she said, the only thing I want out of that bag is the prayer card. And they said, how do you know there's a prayer card in here? And she didn't say anything to them. And they said, can we ask where you're from? And she said, heaven. And they looked at each other, and they thought it was kind of funny at a joke, but she got the prayer card, and they said, are you sure you would not like the rest of the stuff? And she said, no, thank you. She said, I'm going to take this prayer card, and I'm going to pray for you. And I want to pray for you guys. I'm okay. And they proceeded to leave, and they turned the corner, which was only about 30, 40 feet away. And they said, let's go back and take a picture with her. And as they turned the corner, she was gone. And so when they talk about it, they say that something came over them, like it was a feeling of just amazement that they felt. And
like a peace? Like
a peace, right, that they had met an angel.
Calm, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was pretty funny how they all ended up in the same group together and then had that experience, which is beautiful. But we've had numerous experiences with homeless people, which unfortunately most of us pass by every day without giving them credit or even just a little bit of validity. And when we go, the stories are amazing and beautiful, actually.
The acknowledgement of someone's life is a validation as well, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't take time to do that. And then, sometimes we feel hollow because nobody's really taking notice of us.
Sure.
We do that to others all the time. So
sad, actually.
it really is. It really is. It should matter. We're put in each other's paths for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So like we said, those 4 people, there was a reason why all 4 of them were together. They all had to learn that lesson, right?
It was a huge divine intervention.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love hearing that story. I love hearing all of your stories because it's like, yeah, I get it. It all makes sense to me. So some people listening are like, yeah, okay, not so much. But when it happens, it just totally clicks. It totally clicks. And that's the difference, is acknowledging each other. It's not that we need external validation, because we all come, and you were saying before how children's innocence and, they really can teach us a lot because they haven't kind of come over to the dark side. They haven't changed yet. We all come factory installed with everything we need. For some reason, somewhere along the line, we're taught to get validated outside ourselves, when all we have to do is validate ourselves. We have everything we need inside.
Sure.
We just have to trust it, and we have to surrender to your God, to your universe, to whatever you have to surrender to, whatever your higher power is.
Absolutely.
And once you do that, I find life is so easy. There are still challenges. You always have to have challenges, but in each of those challenges is what you're supposed to learn. And if you're just looking at a challenge like that, it doesn't become emotional. It's like, all right, what am I supposed to learn with this?
Sure.
And it becomes almost, well, I hate to minimize it and say it becomes a sport, but it almost becomes a sport where you're like, okay, what's the challenge here? It's not something you go, oh my gosh, what, no.
Well, the funny thing about it, when you learn spirituality, when you live as a spiritual person, there is no bad.
Yeah.
There is, and you can't define anything as bad because everything has a purpose.
Right.
And it's all here to teach us something, like you said.
And it's not always easy. I mean, we've gone through, I know I've gone through some emotional things. You've gone through a lot of emotional things that just tear you apart. And through it all, you're still going, okay, what am I supposed to learn here? Because yikes, why would you put me through this unless I'm going to learn something? Usually the more painful it is, the larger the learning curve.
Absolutely.
I have found.
Sure.
The most painful thing I've gone through so far has been my largest jumping ground and learning curve, and I'm where I am today as a result.
Sure.
And I love it, so I'm very grateful. Wasn't too happy about the incident and the person. Now I'm grateful, and I wish them all luck. I don't want them in my life, but I wish them all the luck and success that they want and happiness that they want. But without it, I wouldn't be here. And I wouldn't have gone to you.
See that?
I wouldn't have gone to you and found you.
And you wouldn't be here.
I wouldn't be here. This is true. And I can't, somebody asked me, how did you come about doing this? And I'm like, couldn't tell you. I really cannot tell you how to connect those dots. And normally I can, because I tried to jam them in. And that's why my life has been very struggly. It's like I tried to do the round peg into the square hole.
Yeah.
Somehow it happened through a couple of conversations, and then poof, I was here. And I'm like, huh. It was so bizarre. And I do remember the conversation. It was supposed to be a different type of show. And I went, no, there's too many of those. I want this kind of show. And I don't know where that came from. It just came out of my mouth. And I'm like, all right, apparently that's what I want.
There you go.
Isn't that great? But you see this all the time. You live this life. I
do. I choose to live as a spiritual person. It's a deeper, more rewarding sense of life to me.
You're very... and I mean this with the most love and appreciation and respect. You're very clear as to what you want and don't want.
Sure.
And that to me is amazing. I'm just getting to that point. I just recently, I'm like, nope. That doesn't work for me.
Because most people today have a conflict between what they think and what they feel. It causes a lot of confusion. The intellect will keep you in your ego, whereas the spirit is yearning to come and lead from your emotions. And so a lot of people won't either trust their emotions or overthink things. I've learned to quiet the brain and let my heart sing and do what it wants. I follow my feelings. So that's why I'm very clear what I feel. Yeah. I'm very clear. I don't think about my feelings. I just act on them.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a true spiritual person gets the most reward from.
And it's led you down this path, because you're going in a different direction now, because you used to do a lot more reading, spending a lot more time with that. Now you're doing more guidance, right?
I am.
I mean, I know you still do reading.
Yeah.
And the teaching, yeah. You do you have groups? Do you do individual teaching?
Sure. I do a monthly workshop.
Okay.
I have all different types of topics there for a person who may be spiritual or not. It's just a spiritual perspective on a different topic.
So I know one of them is manifestation, right?
Yes.
That's coming up really soon, July 13th.
July 13th, yes.
And talk about that particular workshop.
It's about creating the life that you really want, to manifest it. It has a lot to do with the law of attraction, and that the idea of your thoughts create your reality.
I can tell you it works.
Yes. And so, a lot of us are living with lack and hope, which cancel each other out. So I teach people how to actually just have an abundance of everything, because the universe will respond to what you say to it. If you send out lack, it's going to send you lack. If you send out abundance, it's even if you don't have what you're saying you're abundant of, you'll get more of it. So that's this one, the manifestation, creating the world and life that you're desiring.
And then relationship?
Yes, I have one in August in relationships.
August 17th.
Yes, and this one is a pretty big one. It sells out every year. And I encourage couples to come because it's a non-conventional look at relationships. It's the spiritual idea of what this relationship means. And I'm a true believer that nothing really changes until it's on a soul level. The human level, it's the surface level. You're scratching an itch on the top. It's not going to get to the deep-rooted problem. So I always tell people the spiritual solution to everything is something that will change it forever. So I give people a whole different perspective on relationships, which is, I think, pretty informative, and people have come back to compliment it, where their relationships have flourished because of it. So that's a really big one that I love doing.
Oh my goodness. And then September 21st, this is my favorite one, is faith. Talk about that. Oh,
I'm taking a leap of faith. I'm actually, it's something I've always wanted to talk about. It's a chapter that I'm writing in my book right now. I'm writing a book. And
really? What's the book about?
It's about my journey pretty much, but it's my perspective on life.
Love it. You need to share that with the masses. You have a great perspective.
So. Thank you. But this one is a tough one because I was raised such a strict Catholic, and it goes against what I was taught, but it's what has unfolded since becoming spiritual.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people are in need of this because they conform to religion, and their lives are structured around it and also limited because of it. And I feel like this is a freeing topic once you really understand what the truth is. And I'm not saying anyone's lying, but
no, but I like the way you said conform, because to me, I was also brought up very strictly Catholic every Sunday. I even gloves, hat was absolute necessity. I had to be in a dress, the whole 9 yards. So wow. Really strict. And conforming was interesting, and I was always the good little girl, follow all the directions that I was given and told. But then you're not thinking for yourself now, are you? Mm-mm. So, and does it really serve you? And that's the question I always ask, no matter what you're doing. I ask myself is this really serving me? Is this what I need? Is it, or am I just going along to get along?
Well, if you think about it, the greatest gift of healing is love.
Yes.
Or the greatest facet or facilitator of healing is love. And so, in my opinion, throughout the years, in many different forms, religion has always created fear in some way.
Yes.
And so fear stifles people, whereas love expands your heart and opens you up. So the real truth behind it, and if anybody hasn't seen the movie The Shack or read the book The Shack from Paul Young, it just explains it in a way that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense. And in my opinion, it was just in such need. And it's funny, when I asked Paul how he wrote it, he said, I didn't. They wrote it for me. It came through me. And so I really believe there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are going on to shift this world right now.
Yeah.
Into a better place.
I do. I think it's necessary. I think our millennials are really have their finger on the pulse and moving in that direction, because they have a different way of looking at things coming from, our generation. Sure. And you look at and we're like, well, we didn't teach you that. Where did you get this from? But they're coming with this other angle, if you will, or perception, and it's intriguing to me. It really is intriguing to me that I'm watching that going on, and people of our age are getting more spiritual. And yes. I was recently in a church. I won't mention the denomination, but I was sitting there listening to the contradictions in the scripture and contradictions in what they were saying. That God was judging us. And I was like, God doesn't judge. God loves everything about us. God just wants us to learn. And so all these things they were saying, and I'm like, okay, well, all right. So, and it works for some people. It doesn't work for me. And those contradictions were very limiting, because fear is purposefully limiting. Keeping people down is is really made to keep us small. And we shouldn't be small. We should be as big as we want to be. So lifting up is what you do every day. I try to do every day, is lift other people up. I don't want to keep them down. And when I was listening to the words, it struck me, because I had listened to them my entire life growing up, every single Sunday. Without fail. Didn't matter if I was dying.
Me too.
I'd have to be bleeding to death and out cold. My mother would still have me go. So I listened to those words and I never got that connection. And then, so I'm just looking at the world a different way.
With the gift that I had as a young boy, I would sit in church and ask my mom questions, which she would either pinch me or slap me.
I get shushed a lot. Yeah, shush.
Because she didn't have the answer.
Yeah.
I would bring up conflicting ideas that didn't make sense to me with what I was hearing. And, that's part of, again, the reason I became spiritual in my life, or what led me to spirituality. But it just seems to me that religion serves a purpose, and it has a reason, and it has
without a doubt
a great support for the human part of us. But I think the spiritual part of us yearns for spirituality.
Yes.
It's the essence of who we are. It's the deepest part of us, and it connects to our soul, which is far greater than the human part of us.
Agreed. And I'm not taking a shot at religion at all, because certain people, you need that. There's a use for everything, right?
Sure.
And both serve me very well. But for me, the spiritualism has really taken over and just changed my life, completely changed my life. And I can tell, based on the quality of people who are in my life, it just elevated.
Sure.
And again, not a disrespect, it's just a different plateau. I always kind of look at it as plateaus. We're all on different plateaus. And a couple of people like yourself reached down, and I took your hand and came up, and learning in a different way and looking at life in a different way. And it's amazing and beautiful, and kind of seeing life the way you did. Because when I first met you, I'm like, how does he do this? Why is it? It was very intriguing. And I love how you look at life, and you really do. You embrace it, and you just serve other people with this kindness and ease that it's so natural. Whereas other people really have to struggle with it and kind of force themselves in that direction.
Well, I was one of those people.
Yeah.
And it, like you said before, you have to surrender. Yes. You have to give in to your spirit. It wants so badly to guide you to what is your greatest and highest good. And if you stay in the human part of you, which is a conditioned thought, it's going to keep you in a regimented, almost like a hamster on a wheel.
Yeah.
And you'll never find the solution. So when you give up any expectation or ideas or anything other than just love and compassion and forgiveness and kindness, and your life just seems to find its way. It's so beautiful. The
phrase of everything happens for a reason has a different meaning for me now.
100%.
It used to be, a modifier for something bad happening. It's no longer that. Everything happens for a reason. I surrender to the universe, and the universe has not proven itself wrong. It has been there for me every time, and it never fails. It never fails you.
No.
Never fails you. It may not be what you expect or think it should be, but it never fails you when you look back and go, oh my God, thank God it happened this way.
Sure.
It's amazing. While you're going through it, you're like, what the heck?
Well, a lot of people think it's an obstacle. They run into obstacles. And I always tell them that when you live as a spiritual person, it's a series of opportunities that line up to give you exactly what your soul's desire is.
Yeah.
And life is never going to be what you want it to be. It's always going to be what it needs to be.
Oh, I like that. Say that again.
I said life was never going to be what you want it to be. It'll always be what it needs to be.
Nice.
Because we come here with an agenda and a reason to fulfill what we've come to learn. So you can't always get what you want. You'll get more of what you want when you learn what you need.
I like that. That's true. That's very true. Oh my gosh, that's really good. Yeah, because I look at life as, you start with point A and you're going to end up at point B, whether you take a zigzag to it or you go a straight line. That's up to you. And we have a propensity to make it a lot more difficult than it has to be.
Yes, we do.
Feel like sometimes life is like we're taking life on when we're in the physical element, like we're in that clover leaf coming off of the expressway, going up back onto the expressway, coming off the expressway, going back onto the expressway. And it's just like if you just surrender, you'll just get on the expressway. So that's the visual I always look. It's like, oh, I'm in a clover leaf again, but I'm doing it to myself because I'm not allowing it to happen. I'm putting an expectation on the result, and I ultimately get where I'm supposed to be. And I look back and I go, yep, I see.
There you
Okay,
go.
thank you. I got it. And you go through that thing, and the more it happens, the universe rewards you.
Sure.
You get these rewards. It's like, okay, you got it. Here, look at this. It's going to come to you very easily. And it is exciting.
It is exciting.
And for people who've been through it, that makes perfect sense. And for you who haven't yet, you'll see. You gotta surrender.
I 100% agree.
So if you had one last comment before we go, and unfortunately our time is rapidly coming to an end, what would that one thing be? And also, really, how can they get in touch with you to participate in your event in November and also your workshops?
They can call my office number, which is 631-588-4340. And they'll get a call back with all the information that they're looking for, either for the seminar or the monthly workshops. A final thought would be every day is an opportunity to become your greatest and highest version of you. And if you stay limited, there's no reason to complain or to blame. You have to look within the mirror and love yourself in order to become that higher and greatest good. And I stress to people every day, spirituality is not a religion, it's not a cult, it's not anything other than a higher consciousness with a different thought. And it's so easy to get into, so I would suggest people seek out spirituality in their own way and find what's comfortable for them. And the hope is that they'll nurture their heart and soul.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Paul.
It's my pleasure.
Always love having you on. We'll have you on soon. Thank you again for joining us today on Healthy Lifestyle. It's my heart is always lifted by sharing this time with you. Remember, how will you help someone this week? Think about a person in your life who is struggling and give them some help. Also, do a little something for yourself every day. It's important. Make that habit and have yourself a good day. We'll see you next week.